My name is Lyra, and I am 29 years old. For most of my life, my voice was a secret I kept locked away, a casualty of a single devastating moment in my childhood. My older sister, Celeste, the golden child of our family, was the one blessed with a voice like an angel, or so everyone believed. She was the star, the performer, the one destined for greatness. I was just her quiet, supportive shadow. She once told me in front of our entire family that my voice was so terrible I should never sing again. And for 15 years, I obeyed. Last night, as my sister sat in a luxury suite at the Super Bowl, expecting to watch a pop megastar perform, the entire world heard me sing the national anthem. My family thought I was just a shy librarian from a small town. They had no idea that for the past 5 years, I've been secretly living a double life as Echo, one of the most mysterious and celebrated anonymous singers in the world. The secret is out, and the life I carefully built is about to collide with the family that never truly saw me. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you the story of how a whispered cruelty became a global revelation, hit like and subscribe to hear more true stories about overcoming the people who tried to hold you down. Before my world split in two, it was defined by the towering presence of my sister. Growing up in our small, picturesque New England town, the Hayes family was known for one thing: Celeste's voice. She was a prodigy. From the moment she sang her first solo in the church choir at age 6, she was anointed. Our parents, Jonathan and Marion, both music teachers at the local high school, poured every ounce of their energy, resources, and hope into her. Our home wasn't just a house, it was Celeste's training ground. The living room was dominated by a baby grand piano. The air was always thick with the sound of her scales, her rehearsals, her soaring soprano voice that seemed to rattle the window panes. I loved music too. I had a quiet, lower voice, more soulful than powerful, but I loved to sing. Celeste and I would harmonize on long car rides, our voices weaving together in a way that felt like magic. She was my idol, my best friend, my everything. I was her biggest fan, holding her sheet music, bringing her tea with honey for her throat, and sitting in the front row of every recital, my heart swelling with pride. The day my voice was silenced, I was 10 years old. Our town was holding its annual Founders Day talent show, the biggest local event of the year. For the first time, I had worked up the courage to sign up for a solo. Celeste, who was 14 and already a local celebrity, was the headliner, of course. I had chosen a simple folk song, one my grandmother used to sing to me, and I had practiced it in secret for weeks, whispering the lyrics into my pillow at night. I was nervous, but excited. I wanted to show my parents, to show Celeste, that I had a little bit of magic in me too. I made the mistake of telling my sister my plan. We were in her room, the walls covered in ribbons and awards. She was getting ready for her own rehearsal. "You're going to sing?" she asked, a strange, tight smile on her face that I didn't understand. "In the talent show? A solo?" Yes, I beamed, expecting her to be excited for me. "Will you help me practice?" "Of course," she said. "Sing it for me now." I stood in the middle of her room, took a deep breath, and sang my little song. My voice was trembling, but clear. When I finished, I looked at her, my eyes shining with hope. The smile was gone from her face. Her expression was cold, appraising. "Oh, Lyra," she said, her voice laced with a pity that felt sharper than any insult. "Honey, no. Just no." My world tilted. "What do you mean?" "Your voice. It's just not good. It's weak. It's off-key. It's embarrassing." She walked over and put her arm around my shoulder, a gesture that felt more like a restraint than a comfort.
"Listen to me. I'm your big sister, and I have to be honest. You'll make a fool of yourself. You'll make a fool of the family. It's better if you just don't. Stick to drawing. You're good at that." The words struck me with the force of a physical blow. That evening, at the dinner table, she brought it up again, framing it as an act of mercy. "I saved Lyra from a world of embarrassment today. she announced to our parents. She was going to sing in the talent show, but I told her it wasn't a good idea. Her voice just isn't ready. My parents, who had never even heard me sing a solo, nodded in agreement, their relief palpable. "Celeste knows best, honey," my father said, not even looking at me. "It's good you have a sister looking out for you." I felt my throat close up, the unshed tears burning behind my eyes. I looked across the table at Celeste, who gave me a small, triumphant smile. In that moment, something inside me broke. I quietly withdrew my name from the talent show the next day, and I never sang in front of another person again for the next 15 years. Life after that day settled into a new, rigid pattern. Celeste's star continued to rise, and my world became smaller and quieter. The shared harmonies in the car stopped. I stopped humming around the house. Music, once a source of joy, became a source of pain, a constant reminder of my own inadequacy. I poured myself into books and art, the silent pursuits my sister had deemed acceptable for me. I became the family librarian, the quiet archivist of Celeste's ever-growing list of accomplishments. My parents, blinded by the glare of their star child, seemed not to notice the change in me. They saw my silence not as a symptom of a wound, but as a personality trait. "Lyra's the studious one," they'd tell people, "so serious and focused." They had no idea that my focus was a defense mechanism, a way to build a world where my voice wasn't needed. Celeste's career blossomed. She won a scholarship to Juilliard, and her career as a classical crossover singer took off. She released albums, toured the world, and became a minor celebrity, known for her pristine voice and her girl-next-door charm. I followed her career from a distance, through the glossy magazine articles my mother left on the coffee table and the gushing posts on her social media. The bond we once shared had frayed into a polite, distant relationship. We spoke on holidays and birthdays, the conversations always revolving around her. I never mentioned music. It was our family's great unspoken rule. After graduating with a degree in library sciences, I took a job at a small university library 3 states away. The distance was a deliberate choice. I needed air. I needed a place where I wasn't Celeste Hayes' little sister. My life in the quiet town of Northwood was anonymous and peaceful. I made friends, I adopted a cat, and I slowly began to heal. The singing started again by accident. It was a lonely Tuesday night, a year after I had moved. I was dusting my small apartment and an old song came on the radio, the same folk song I had planned to sing at the talent show. Without thinking, I started to hum along. Then, hesitantly, I formed the words. In the privacy of my own empty apartment, I sang. My voice was rusty, hesitant, but it was there. It felt like finding a long-lost part of myself. From then on, I sang only for myself. In my car, in the shower, when I was home alone. It was my secret joy, a private rebellion. One evening, my best friend, a compassionate and tech-savvy woman named Naomi, was over for dinner. I thought she had left, but she had forgotten her scarf and let herself back in while I was washing dishes, singing my heart out to a song on the radio. She stood in the doorway, her eyes wide.
"Lyra, I had no idea," she whispered when I finished, my face burning with embarrassment. "Your voice is incredible." "No, it's not. It's just something I do," I stammered, the old shame rushing back. It was Naomi who pushed me. She was a freelance web developer and a hobbyist music producer. "We have to do something with this," she insisted. "Just for fun, let's record a cover. No one has to know it's you. We can put it online anonymously." It took her weeks to convince me, but I finally agreed. We set up a simple microphone in my walk-in closet, the clothes acting as soundproofing. We recorded a haunting, stripped-down version of a classic rock song. My voice, no longer a child's trembling soprano, had matured into a rich, emotive alto. Naomi mixed the track, uploaded it to a streaming platform under the name of Echo, and we thought nothing more of it. 2 weeks later, the song had 10,000 plays. A month later, 100,000. A popular music blogger discovered it, writing, "Who is Echo?
This anonymous singer's voice is a raw, emotional gut punch. It's the kind of voice that makes you feel everything at once. The mystery was part of the appeal. In an age of oversharing celebrities, the anonymous echo was a breath of fresh air. The voice was everything. That one song turned into a secret project. Every few months, Naomi and I would record a new cover. Our production quality got better. We created anonymous social media accounts for Echo, which were run by Naomi. The mystique grew. The follower count exploded into the millions. We were contacted by record labels, by talk shows, by concert promoters. We turned them all down. The anonymity was my shield. Echo was powerful and celebrated. Lyra was safe and unknown. This double life was thrilling and terrifying. I was living my dream in secret, terrified that the two worlds would one day collide. The only other person who knew was my agent, a shrewd and fiercely protective man named Julian Croft, whom Naomi had found. He understood the power of the brand and handled all the business, communicating with me through encrypted emails, ensuring my identity remained a secret. For 5 years, I maintained this perfect, impossible balance. By day, I was Lyra Hayes, a quiet librarian in Northwood. By night, I was Echo, a global singing sensation who no one had ever seen. The money, which had started as a trickle and become a flood, was managed by Julian through a corporation set up in my name. I lived modestly, funneling most of the earnings into investments and a secret trust. My family had no idea. To them, I was still just their reliable, unsuccessful daughter. When my mother would call and complain about their finances, I would listen patiently, never letting on that my secret career was earning more than Celeste's ever had. The opportunity that would shatter my carefully constructed world arrived in a cryptic email from Julian. The subject line was simply, "The offer." He wanted an immediate secure video call. I locked my office door at the library during my lunch break, my heart pounding. Julian's face appeared on my screen, his expression a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Lyra, I've just gotten off the phone with the NFL," he said, getting straight to the point. "They want Echo to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl." I almost choked on my coffee. The Super Bowl? That's impossible. They have the biggest stars in the world for that, and no one knows who I am. That's the point. The producer for the halftime show is a huge Echo fan. He wants to do something unprecedented, a mystery performer. They want to reveal Echo's identity to the world live, in front of 100 million people. The room started to spin. This wasn't just a performance. It was a public unmasking.
No, absolutely not, I said, my voice shaking. Lyra, listen to me. Julian's voice was calm and persuasive. This is the biggest stage on the planet, the kind of opportunity that defines a career. The fee they are offering is astronomical, but that's not the point. This is your chance to step out of the shadows on your own terms. My family will be there, I whispered, the thought sending a wave of nausea through me. Celeste is presenting an award at the pre-show. My parents are going with her. They'll have a suite. Julian was silent for a moment. Well, he said finally, that certainly adds a layer of drama, doesn't it? We talked for an hour. He laid out the security protocols, the media strategy, the absolute control we would have over the narrative of the reveal. It was a perfectly planned military operation. By the end of the call, my no had softened to a terrified maybe. The idea was insane. It was reckless, but it was also a fantasy. A small, vengeful part of me, the 10-year-old girl standing in her sister's bedroom, imagined the look on their faces. The decision was made for me a few days later, during a phone call with my mother. She was gushing about their Super Bowl plans. It's also exciting. Celeste will be on the red carpet, and we have a beautiful suite with a perfect view of the field. The pop star performing the anthem this year is one of Celeste's favorites. She's just thrilled. Oh, by the way, honey, Celeste was wondering if you'd be willing to house sit for her while they're gone. Her dog sitter canceled. The request was so typical, so casually dismissive that it solidified my resolve. They were going to the biggest event of the year to celebrate my sister, and my role in this grand family moment was to watch her dog. "I'm sorry, Mom, I can't. I think I have plans that weekend," I said, a strange sense of calm settling over me. I called Julian back. "I'll do it." The next 2 months were a blur of secret preparations. I flew to Los Angeles under an assumed name for wardrobe fittings and rehearsals in a private, locked-down soundstage. I worked with a vocal coach, not to improve my voice, but to manage my stage fright. The NFL producers were incredible, treating the entire project with the secrecy of a state secret. The official story was that the pop star had been booked. My name, Lyra Hayes, appeared on no documents. To the world, I was still Echo, and my identity was the best-kept secret in the music industry. The week before the game, I told my boss at the library I had a family emergency and needed to take a few days off. Naomi, my friend and co-conspirator, helped me pack, her face a mixture of terror and glee. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, zipping up my suitcase. "No," I said, honestly, "but I'm going to do it anyway." The day of the Super Bowl, I was sequestered in a private trailer hidden in the bowels of the stadium. I watched the pregame show on a small monitor, my heart hammering against my ribs. I saw my sister on the red carpet, radiant in a designer gown, laughing with a reporter. I saw my parents standing behind her, beaming with pride. The reporter asked Celeste about the mystery of Echo. "Oh, I think she's a wonderful singer," Celeste said with a magnanimous smile. "But honestly, I think the whole anonymity thing is a bit of a gimmick. True talent doesn't need to hide." The comment was so perfectly, predictably her. It was the final push I needed. 15 minutes before I was due on stage, there was a knock on my trailer door. It was Julian. He handed me a small, encrypted tablet. "It's time," he said. "The press release, the social media posts, the entire digital reveal is preloaded. The moment you are introduced, my team hits send. The world will know who you are." He squeezed my shoulder. "You've got this, Lyra." I walked through the dark tunnels leading to the field, my heart pounding in time with the roar of the crowd. This was it. There was no turning back. Standing in the wings, hidden from the view of the 80,000 people in the stadium and the millions watching at home, the world seemed to slow down. The roar of the crowd became a distant hum. I could feel the vibrations of the stadium through the soles of my shoes. A stage manager with a headset gave me a final, encouraging nod. On the monitor, I saw the pop star who was supposed to be performing walk to the center of the field and take the microphone. The crowd cheered. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice echoing through the stadium. "Tonight, we have a very special surprise for you. For years, the world has been captivated by a voice, a mystery, a singer known only as Echo. Tonight, for the first time, Echo is going to step into the light. Please welcome Echo." My cue. I took a deep breath, the air tasting of electricity and popcorn, and walked out of the shadows and into the blinding glare of the stadium lights. I kept my head down, my long, dark hair shielding my face, as I walked to the microphone at the 50-yard line. I could feel the collective confusion of the crowd, the whispers rippling through the stands. Who was this unknown woman? Where was the star they were expecting? I reached the microphone, took one more deep, centering breath, and lifted my head. I looked directly into the camera, knowing that on the other end of that lens, my family was watching. In the luxury suite, my mother, Marion, leaned forward, squinting at the giant screen. "Who is that? She looks familiar." My father, Jonathan, frowned. "It's probably just some unknown backup singer. What a strange gimmick." Celeste, however, had gone completely still. Her champagne flute paused halfway to her lips. She stared at the screen, her eyes wide, a dawning horror on her face. It couldn't be, but it was. Back on the field, the opening notes of the Star-Spangled Banner began to play. I closed my eyes for a second, shutting out the crowd, the lights, the entire world. I thought of the 10-year-old girl in her sister's bedroom. This was for her. I opened my eyes, found the camera again, and I sang. The voice that filled the stadium was not a child's whisper. It was a woman's voice, rich and full of a soulful power that 15 years of silence had only deepened. It was a voice that held every secret, every heartbreak, every quiet moment of joy I had ever experienced. As I sang, I could feel the mood in the stadium shift from confusion to captivated silence, then to a rising wave of awe. At the exact moment I sang the first note, Julian's team hit send. Across the globe, phones buzzed. A single coordinated post went live on every major news outlet and social media platform. It was a simple, elegant black and white photo of me taken in a studio last week with a caption, "I am Echo. My name is Lyra Hayes." It included a link to a newly launched website with my full story, a carefully crafted narrative about my journey, the power of music, and the importance of finding your own voice. In the suite, my father's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, annoyed by the interruption. He saw the headline from a major news network. His eyes widened. He looked from his phone to the screen and back to his phone. He grabbed my mother's arm, his hand shaking. "Marian, look at this." My mother read the alert, her face going pale. "No, it's a mistake. It's a different Lyra Hayes." But then Celeste's phone buzzed, and then everyone's phone in the suite began to light up. The secret was out, and it was spreading through the stadium and across the world at the speed of light. They looked at the screen, at the woman with their last name, their daughter, their sister, and they finally, truly saw me. I held the final note. "And the home of the brave," my voice soaring and clear, echoing into the stunned silence of the stadium. For a moment, after the music stopped, there was nothing. And then the stadium erupted. It was a roar of applause, of shock, of pure, unadulterated enthusiasm. It was the sound of 100 million people discovering a secret. I stood there, my hand on my heart, tears I hadn't realized were forming now streaming down my face. I had done it. I had taken back my voice. I looked up at the luxury boxes, unable to see them, but knowing they were watching. And I smiled. The little girl was finally free. The walk off the field was a surreal blur. Stage hands and security guards, whose faces had been blank and professional moments before, now stared at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. The pop star who had introduced me grabbed me in a hug. "That was legendary," she shouted over the roar of the crowd. "You have the voice of a freaking angel." Julian was waiting for me just inside the tunnel, his usually composed face split by a massive grin. He wrapped me in a bear hug, lifting me off my feet. "You did it, Lyra. You actually did it." He showed me his phone. The internet was exploding. Hashtag Who is Lyra Hayes was the #1 trending topic worldwide. The server for the website had crashed twice from the sheer volume of traffic. My anonymous social media accounts had been rebranded with my name and photo, and my follower count was climbing by hundreds of thousands per minute. "Your family has been trying to call," Julian said, his expression turning more serious as he handed me my phone. It showed 27 missed calls, from my mother, my father, and Celeste. I ignored them and switched the phone to silent. "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight is for me." The plan we had crafted was executed with precision. Instead of going back to my hotel, I was whisked away through a series of private tunnels to a secure location. There would be no immediate interviews, no press conferences. The mystery of Echo was solved, but the mystery of Lyra Hayes had just begun. We would control the narrative by saying nothing at all for the next 24 hours, letting the world digest the shock of the reveal and my story, which was now spreading like wildfire online. Back in the luxury suite, chaos reigned. My family sat in stunned, horrified silence, as the people around them, corporate sponsors and NFL executives who had been fawning over Celeste moments before, now stared at them with a mixture of confusion and dawning fascination. "Lyra Hayes?" one of the executives said, looking at my father. She's related to you?" She's our daughter," my father managed to say, the words sounding foreign in his mouth. The executive's eyes lit up. "You must be so proud. Her performance was breathtaking. The story of the reveal is marketing genius. You kept this a secret all this time?" My parents could only nod numbly, trapped in a lie of omission that had just become their new reality. Celeste sat frozen, her face ashen. Her phone was buzzing with texts from her own agent, her publicist, her friends, but she couldn't look at it. All she could see was my face on the giant screen, my voice filling the stadium, my triumph echoing in the ears of the world. The shadow had just eclipsed the sun. The next morning, I woke up in a quiet, luxurious hotel suite booked under another assumed name. It was the first time in my adult life I had woken up as my whole self. Lyra Hayes, the librarian, and Echo, the singer, were finally the same person. The feeling was terrifying and exhilarating. Naomi had been there, having flown in the night before. She greeted me with a tackle hug and a stack of newspapers. My face was on the front page of every single one. "The Silent Sister Sings," one headline screamed. "Echoes of a Secret, the Lyra Hayes story," read another.
My story, as told on the website, had captured the public's imagination. It was a story of family, of secrets, of a quiet woman with a powerful gift who had finally claimed her spotlight. Crucially, the story was framed not as an attack on my family, but as a personal journey of overcoming insecurity. It mentioned a childhood incident that had led to a loss of confidence, but it didn't name names or cast blame. It was a masterful piece of public relations, making me look like a graceful victor, not a vengeful victim. "Your family is in full-blown panic mode," Naomi said, scrolling through her phone. "Your dad released a statement." She read it aloud. "We are unbelievably proud of our daughter Lyra. We have always known about her incredible talent and have supported her journey of finding the right moment to share it with the world. We are a family that values privacy, and we are thrilled that she is now ready to step into the spotlight she so richly deserves." The hypocrisy was so blatant, so audacious that I had to laugh. "They are actually trying to take credit for this," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "Of course they are," Naomi said. "What else can they do? The narrative is already set. You're the Cinderella story. They can either be the evil stepfamily or the loving family that was in on the secret all along. They're choosing option B." But Celeste, it seemed, was not on board with the new family narrative. A gossip site had already published a story quoting an anonymous source from her entourage. "Celeste is devastated," the source claimed. "She feels utterly betrayed. Her sister kept the secret from her for years. It was a calculated move to upstage her on the biggest night of her career." The battle for the story had begun. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in strategic silence. While my family scrambled to control a narrative that was spiraling away from them, I remained completely out of the public eye. The world's fascination with my story only grew. Talk shows debated the family dynamics. Psychologists were brought on news segments to analyze the impact of sibling rivalry. My music, which had always been popular, now skyrocketed to the top of every chart. The 5 albums of covers I had released as Echo were all in the top 10. I was, as one publication put it, the most famous person nobody knows. Julian managed the storm with the skill of a seasoned general. He politely declined interview requests from every major network, stating that Lyra was taking some private time to process this momentous change in her life. This only fueled the public's interest. He was creating scarcity, making my first interview the most sought-after prize in media. Meanwhile, my family's attempts to co-opt my success became more desperate and clumsy. My father, in an interview with a local Boston paper, claimed he was the one who had first discovered my voice. I always told her, "Lyra, your voice is special, but the world isn't ready for it yet. We must nurture it in secret," he said. A statement so laughably false, it was almost impressive. My mother began posting old family photos on her social media, pictures of me as a child, always with a caption like, "Our little songbird, even then, #proudmom." She conveniently omitted any photos from the 15-year period where I wasn't singing. But Celeste continued her shadow campaign. More sources close to her spoke to gossip blogs, painting a picture of a devoted older sister who had been blindsided by a jealous sibling. Celeste was Lyra's biggest supporter, one story claimed. She was the one who encouraged Lyra to get into music. To have the secret kept from her is a deep and painful wound.
The turning point came from an unexpected source. Our grandmother, my father's mother, Evelyn. She was a formidable, no-nonsense woman of 85 who lived in Florida and had always seen through her son's posturing. She had always been quietly fond of me, often sending me books and small checks on my birthday with notes that said, "For your secret adventures." She had never explicitly taken my side in the family's dynamics, but she was a keen observer. She called me on the third day after the Super Bowl. "Lyra, dear, I saw you on the television," she said, her voice a gravelly whisper. "You were magnificent. It's about time you showed them what you're made of." "Thank you, Grandma," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Now listen to me. Your father and your sister are making fools of themselves. They are trying to rewrite history, and I will not stand for it. A very famous journalist, a woman I play bridge with, is about to call you. Her name is Beatrice Vance. She is the best in the business. You will grant her the first exclusive interview, and you will tell her the truth. All of it. Don't you dare protect them. They don't deserve it." The call from Beatrice Vance came an hour later. She was a legendary journalist, famous for her tough but fair interviews that could make or break careers. She wanted a sit-down interview, a primetime special. "The world wants to know your story, Miss Hayes," she said, her voice crisp and professional, "and I want to be the one to help you tell it." Julian was ecstatic. This was the exact opportunity he had been waiting for. We agreed on the condition that we had full editorial control over the final cut, a demand to which she surprisingly agreed. The interview was scheduled for the following week. It was time to prepare for the final battle. The preparation was intense. Julian, Naomi, and a team of lawyers and publicists helped me craft my story. We went through every detail, every memory. The most powerful piece of evidence we had was something I had completely forgotten about. After the talent show incident, a heartbroken 10-year-old me had written a long, tearful entry in my diary, detailing exactly what Celeste had said, how my parents had reacted, and how I had decided never to sing again. My grandmother, during one of her visits, had found me crying and read the entry. Without my knowledge, she had photocopied the pages. She had kept them for 19 years. She overnighted them to me. Seeing my own childish handwriting, the tear stains still visible on the page, was a gut-wrenching validation. It was proof. "This is the heart of the story," Beatrice Vance said when we showed it to her in a pre-interview meeting. "This diary entry, it's undeniable." The day of the interview, my family seemed to sense that something was shifting. My father left me a voicemail that was a bizarre mix of threat and plea. "Lyra, I hear you're speaking with Beatrice Vance. That's a very serious platform. I trust you will remember that we are your family and that some things are best kept private. It would be a shame to tarnish this wonderful moment with negativity." Celeste sent a text, "Whatever you're planning, don't. You will regret it." I walked into the TV studio feeling a strange sense of calm. The fear was gone, replaced with a cold, hard certainty. I was no longer the little girl they could silence. I had a voice, and the entire world was about to hear it. The interview set was intimate, just 2 armchairs and a small table under soft, warm lights. Beatrice Vance was exactly as I had seen her on television, poised, intelligent, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. There were no tricks, no gotcha questions. She simply started at the beginning.
"Lyra, for 5 years the world has known you as Echo. Last week we learned your name. Tonight we want to learn your story. Why the secret?" I took a deep breath and started to talk. I told her about my childhood, about my love for music, about my deep admiration for my talented older sister. I painted a picture of our family not with anger, but with a kind of sad, factual clarity. I was careful not to sound like a victim, but like an observer of my own life. Then she guided me to the talent show. "Something happened when you were 10 years old that changed everything. Can you tell me about that?" This was the moment. I recounted the story, the hope, the secret practice, the moment I sang for my sister. "And what was her reaction?" Beatrice asked gently. "She told me my voice was terrible, that I was off-key, weak, and that I would embarrass the family if I performed." Beatrice's expression remained neutral, but I could see a flicker of something in her eyes. "How did that make you feel?" "It broke my heart," I said simply. "She was my idol. I believed her. And my parents, they backed her up. They told me she knew best. So I stopped singing. For 15 years? For 15 years. Then Beatrice did something brilliant. She held up a copy of my childhood diary entry to the camera. "You wrote about this experience in your diary. We have a copy of it here. In your own 10-year-old handwriting, you describe your sister telling you that your voice was embarrassing. You write, 'Mom and Dad said Celeste is right. I will never sing again. It's a secret promise.'" The image of my tear-stained diary page on a national news broadcast was devastatingly effective. It was the irrefutable proof that this was not a recently concocted story, but a deep and long-held wound. Beatrice then skillfully pivoted to my family's reaction to the Super Bowl. She played a clip of my father's interview, where he claimed to have nurtured my talent in secret. "Your father says he always knew about your talent and supported you. How do you respond to that?" I chose my words carefully. My father is a proud man who loves his family. I think in the shock of the moment, he may have misremembered the details of my childhood. It was a masterful understatement, a gentle refutation that made him look foolish without making me look vindictive. Then she played a clip of Celeste from a few years prior, an old interview where she was asked about her family. In it, Celeste said, "Oh, my little sister Lyra? She's the bookish one, completely tone-deaf, couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, bless her heart. She got the brains, I got the voice." The clip ended, and the studio was silent. Beatrice let the moment hang in the air before turning to me. "Couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. That's a direct quote from your sister, who now claims through sources that she was your biggest supporter." "My sister and I have a complicated history," I said, my voice steady. "I love her, but her support was not always evident to me." The interview continued for an hour. We talked about my secret life as Echo, the joy of creating music anonymously, and my decision to finally step into the light. I never raised my voice. I never cried. I simply told my story, backed by the quiet power of the truth. I ended by saying this. This was never about revenge. It was about reclamation. I needed to take back the part of me that I had silenced for so long. My voice is my own. It does not belong to my family's expectations or my sister's fears. It belongs to me. The broadcast aired that night. The public reaction was a tidal wave. The narrative my family had tried to spin was completely obliterated. They were exposed, not by my anger, but by their own words, their own contradictions. The diary entry and the old interview clip were played on a loop on every news channel. The hashtag shifted from "Who is Lyra Hayes" to "Team Lyra" and "Let Lyra Sing." My family, who had so desperately tried to control the story, had become the villains in it. Their phones, I later learned, began to ring off the hook. But this time it wasn't with messages of support. It was with calls from reporters, asking for comment on the diary, on the old interview, on their years of deception. They had nowhere to hide. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for my family's carefully curated public image. The morning after the interview, the proud family narrative they had so desperately tried to construct lay in ruins. My father, a man who prided himself on his reputation in the community, was suddenly facing questions from his law partners. My mother, a prominent member of several local charities, found herself being given the cold shoulder at her garden club. But the biggest blow was to Celeste. Her brand was built on authenticity, on being America's sweetheart. The revelation that she had not only hidden her sister's talent, but actively and cruelly suppressed it, was devastating. Corporate sponsors began to pull out of her upcoming tour. Ticket sales for her concerts plummeted. The comments on her social media shifted from adoration to outrage. She was no longer the angelic prodigy. She was the villainous older sister from a real-life fairy tale.
They retreated into a self-imposed exile, refusing all calls and issuing a stony no comment through a beleaguered publicist. The silence was more damning than any denial. Meanwhile, my own career exploded. The interview had done more than just clear my name. It had made me a global icon of resilience. Offers poured in, a record deal with the most prestigious label in the world, a book deal for my memoir, a movie offer for my life story. I signed the record deal, a multi-album contract that gave me complete creative control. For the first time, I would be writing and singing my own songs, not just covers, my own voice, my own words. I spent the next 6 months in a whirlwind of creative energy. I bought a small, secluded house in the mountains, a place where I could write and record in peace. I worked with the best producers and songwriters in the industry, who treated me not as a gimmick, but as a serious artist. The process was cathartic, a way of turning 15 years of silent pain into music. The first single from my debut album was a song I wrote called The Promise. It was a haunting, powerful ballad about the secret I had kept, about a voice locked away. It was a song about breaking free. It was released 3 months after the interview and went to #1 in 20 countries within 24 hours. The world had heard me sing the anthem, but now they were hearing my soul. It was during this time that I received a letter. It was handwritten on simple, plain stationery with a postmark from my hometown. It was from my father. It was not the blustering, angry letter I would have expected. It was short, and the handwriting was shaky. "Lyra," it began, "I watched your interview. I saw the diary. I had forgotten. In the glare of your sister's spotlight, I became blind to the shadows where you were living. There is no excuse for what we did. We failed you. I failed you. I am not asking for your forgiveness because I have not earned it. I am just saying for the record that I am proud of you, and I am deeply, deeply sorry." It was the first apology he had ever given me in my entire life. I read the letter, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I cried. Not for the pain I had endured, but for the father I might have had. The letter from my father was a crack in the wall of silence. I didn't respond, not yet. I wasn't ready. The wound was too deep, the patterns of a lifetime too ingrained to be healed by a single letter. But it was a start. It was an acknowledgement, a confession, something I never thought I would receive. A few weeks later, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. Her voice was small, tentative, stripped of its usual performative cheerfulness. "Lyra, I know you don't want to talk to us, and I understand. Your grandmother isn't well. She had a fall. She's in the hospital, and she's asking for you." The news sent a jolt of fear through me. Grandma Evelyn was my one true ally, the quiet force who had validated my pain and helped me find the courage to speak it. "I'll be there tomorrow," I said without hesitation. The family reunion I had been dreading took place not in a boardroom or a television studio, but in the quiet, antiseptic hallway of a hospital's geriatric ward. My parents were there, looking older and more tired than I had ever seen them. My father's usual confident posture was gone, replaced by a weary slump. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. Celeste was there too, having flown in from wherever she had been hiding. She was thinner, paler, and the radiant confidence that had always been her armor was gone. She looked diminished. We stood in a strained, awkward silence outside our grandmother's room. It was Celeste who spoke first, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for coming." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "She's my grandmother," I said simply. My father cleared his throat. "Lyra, about the letter. We don't need to talk about that right now." I cut him off gently. "Let's just focus on Grandma." It was a truce, a temporary ceasefire in our family war, brokered by the illness of our matriarch. Grandma Evelyn was frail, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She smiled when she saw me, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. "There's my songbird," she whispered, her hand cool and papery in mine. "I knew you had it in you." We sat with her for hours, the four of us, in a strange, silent tableau. The unspoken things, the apologies, the accusations, hung in the air, but for my grandmother's sake, they remained unspoken. In that quiet room, we were not a celebrity, a lawyer, a music teacher, and a global superstar. We were just a family, scared of losing someone they loved. My grandmother recovered, slowly but surely. I stayed for a week, sleeping on a cot in her hospital room, reading to her and helping the nurses with her care. During that week, small, hesitant conversations began to happen. My mother brought me a cup of tea one morning, sitting in the uncomfortable visitor's chair. "I've been listening to your album," she said quietly. "The song The Promise. Is that about—" "Yes," I said. She nodded, looking down at her hands. "It's beautiful. And it's heartbreaking. I never knew how much we hurt you. I was so focused on Celeste's success, I didn't see your pain." It wasn't an excuse, but an explanation, a confession of a blindness she was only now beginning to recognize. The most difficult conversation was with Celeste. I found her in the hospital cafeteria one afternoon, staring into a cup of coffee. I sat down opposite her, and for a long time, we just sat in silence. "I destroyed my own career, didn't I?" she said, finally, her voice flat. "No," I said. "The choices you made did." She looked up at me then, her eyes swimming with a mixture of resentment and a dawning, painful self-awareness. "Why didn't you ever tell me? Why did you keep it a secret for so long?" "Because you taught me to," I replied. "You taught me that my voice was a source of shame. So I hid it. From you. From everyone." "I was a child," she whispered. "A stupid, jealous, insecure child." "Yes, you were," I agreed. "But we're not children anymore, Celeste." The words hung between us, an acknowledgement of the past and a tentative question about the future. Could we move forward? I didn't know the answer. I only knew that for the first time we were having an honest conversation, stripped of all the old roles and expectations. The journey ahead for our family would be long and uncertain, but in the quiet of that hospital, surrounded by the scent of antiseptic and the fragility of life, a tiny, fragile seed of something new had been planted.
The months following my grandmother's recovery were a period of cautious, painful rebuilding. There was no magical, tearful reunion, no grand moment of forgiveness that washed away 2 decades of dysfunction. Instead, there were small, awkward steps forward, like a patient learning to walk again after a long illness. We started with therapy, all of us. It was my non-negotiable condition for any continued contact. My parents went together, Celeste went on her own, and I continued my sessions with a new therapist who specialized in family dynamics. The first time we all sat in the same room with a therapist, the air was so thick with unspoken resentment, you could have cut it with a knife. Dr. Anya Sharma, a calm, insightful woman with a talent for asking excruciatingly direct questions, guided us through the wreckage. She made us talk about the roles we had been assigned: Celeste the star, Lyra the caretaker, Jonathan the provider, Marion the manager. She helped us see that we weren't just a family, we were a system, and that system had been built around one person's success at the expense of everyone else's emotional well-being. The conversations were brutal. There were tears, shouting matches, and long, stony silences. My father had to confront the ways he had used money and approval as tools of control. My mother had to face her own complicity in enabling the imbalance, her own fear of rocking the boat. But the most profound transformation was Celeste's. Stripped of her career and the public adoration that had been her identity, she was forced to look at herself for the first time. She talked about the immense pressure she had felt since childhood, the terror of failure,
the constant need to be perfect. She admitted that her cruelty to me on that long ago day wasn't about my voice, it was about her fear. "You had something that was just yours," she confessed during one session, her voice choked with tears. "It wasn't something mom and dad had given you. You had this natural, beautiful talent, and I was terrified that if they heard it, if they saw it, they would stop looking at me. So I crushed it. It was the cruelest thing I've ever done." Her confession was a turning point. It wasn't an excuse, but it was a reason. It was the first time I understood that her actions came from a place of weakness, not strength. It didn't erase the hurt, but it began to contextualize it. While the family drama unfolded in private, my public life continued to soar. My debut album, Reclamation, went triple platinum. I won 3 Grammy Awards, including Best New Artist. Standing on that stage, holding the golden gramophone, I didn't thank my family in the traditional sense. Instead, I said, "I want to thank everyone who has ever felt silenced. This is for you. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone ever take it from you." The speech made headlines, seen as another graceful, powerful statement. To my family watching from home, it was a clear and public boundary. I would not pretend our history was perfect for the sake of appearances. I used the platform and the money from my success to create the Echo Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing music education and scholarships to underprivileged kids in small towns like the one I grew up in. I wanted to give other kids the chance my parents had given Celeste, but without the toxic pressure. The foundation became my passion, a way to create a positive legacy from a painful past. Slowly, tentatively, a new kind of family dynamic began to emerge. The phone calls became more regular and less fraught. We started having quiet family dinners, not at my parents' house, which was still full of ghosts, but at neutral restaurants. The conversations were different. They asked about my life, my friends, the foundation. I learned to ask about theirs, to see them as flawed, struggling people, not just the archetypes from my childhood. My father started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, using his skills to help people who couldn't afford a lawyer. My mother took up pottery, finding a creative outlet that was entirely her own. They were changing, becoming more than just Celeste's parents.
A year after the Super Bowl, I was in my studio, putting the finishing touches on my second album. It was a more complex, nuanced record than the first, with songs about forgiveness, about the messy, imperfect nature of healing, about the slow, difficult work of rebuilding. One of the songs was a duet. I had written it with Celeste in mind. It was a simple acoustic ballad called River Between Us, about 2 sisters separated by a gulf of misunderstanding, trying to find their way back to each other. I sent her a demo with a simple note: "I can't sing this with anyone else." She flew out to my mountain home studio a week later. She was nervous, her hands trembling as she stood in front of the microphone. "I haven't sung professionally in a year," she whispered. "I don't know if I can do this." "Just sing, Celeste," I said from the control booth. We recorded the song in a single emotional take. Her pure, classical soprano, which I had once envied, now blended with my deeper, soulful alto in a way that was more beautiful than either of our voices alone. Our harmony was different now, not the innocent sound of 2 children in a car, but the sound of 2 women who had been through a fire and emerged on the other side, scarred but stronger. We cried when we listened to the playback. The song became the lead single for my new album. When it was released, the world was captivated. The story of our estrangement had been public. The story of our slow, quiet reconciliation was now told in our own voices, through our own music. It was a bigger hit than The Promise. It became an anthem for estranged families everywhere, a song of hope and difficult grace. Celeste didn't return to her old career. The desire for fame and applause had been replaced by something quieter. She went back to school, got a degree in music therapy, and now works with children with disabilities, using music to help them find their own voices. She found a purpose that was more fulfilling than any standing ovation. She was finally happy. My father and mother sold the big house, the shrine to Celeste's success. They downsized to a smaller, more manageable home and seemed to shed the weight of their financial pretensions along with the mortgage. They started traveling, not to glamorous resorts, but to national parks, finding a new kind of richness in simplicity. They were finally living for themselves, not for the reflection of their daughter's success. The first time my father heard me perform live was at a small, intimate charity concert for my foundation. I had invited them, not knowing if they would come. They sat in the back row. I sang a set of my new songs, and when I finished, I saw my father wiping a tear from his eye. After the show, he came backstage. "Your grandmother would have been so proud," he said, his voice thick. Then he looked at me, really looked at me. "I am so proud." The words I had longed to hear my entire life finally came, not when I was desperately seeking them, but when I no longer needed them to know my own worth. And because of that, they meant everything. 2 years after that fateful night at the Super Bowl, I found myself standing in a place that once represented the peak of my family's old life, the grand concert hall in the city's Performing Arts Center. It was the same stage where Celeste had made her professional debut at 17, a night I remembered watching from the wings, feeling both proud and completely invisible. Tonight, however, the stage was mine. It was the final show of my first world tour, a sold-out homecoming concert. The energy in the hall was electric. The crowd was a sea of faces, people from every walk of life who had connected with my story. In the front row, I saw Naomi, my loyal friend who had started it all, beaming up at me. Beside her was Julian, my agent, looking on with a fatherly pride. My grandmother, Evelyn, now walking with a cane, but as indomitable as ever, sat between them.
In a private box to the side of the stage, my parents sat, holding hands. They looked different now, softer. The hard edges of their ambition and anxiety smoothed away. They were not here tonight as the parents of a star, but simply as parents. In another box, I saw Celeste. She was not there as a fallen idol or a rival, but as my sister. She caught my eye and gave me a small, genuine smile, a gesture of pure, uncomplicated support that spoke volumes. As I stepped up to the microphone, the applause was deafening. I waited for it to die down, a comfortable silence falling over the massive hall. "It's good to be home," I said, and the crowd roared again. My set was a journey through my life. I sang the haunting covers that had made Echo a phenomenon. I sang the powerful ballads from Reclamation that had told my story of pain and liberation. And I sang the newer, more hopeful songs from my latest album. For my encore, I did something I hadn't planned. "There's one more song I'd like to sing tonight," I said, my voice a little shaky. "It's the first song I ever loved. It's the song a 10-year-old girl was once too afraid to sing." I looked out into the darkness, and in my mind I saw that little girl, my 10-year-old self, standing in the wings, and I smiled at her. I motioned for my band to rest, and in the complete silence of the concert hall, a cappella, I began to sing the simple, beautiful folk song my grandmother had taught me so many years ago. My voice, clear and strong, filled the space. It was not the voice of a Grammy-winning superstar. It was the voice of Lyra Hayes, a voice that had been lost and found, a voice that was finally, completely and unapologetically my own. As I sang, I let my eyes drift to my family. My grandmother was weeping openly, a beautiful, happy smile on her face. My mother and father were crying too, but these were not tears of guilt or shame. They were tears of a deep, hard-won love. And Celeste, she was looking at me, her face full of a complex mix of emotions, but the one that shone through brightest was pride, pure, unadulterated pride for her little sister. When the final note faded into silence, the audience was on its feet, the applause a thunderous wave of validation. But it wasn't the applause that mattered. It was the quiet understanding in the eyes of the 4 people in the boxes. We were not the family we once were. We were something new, something broken and rebuilt, something more honest and far more beautiful. The journey had been a painful one, but it had led us all home. The after-party was a glittering affair held in a rooftop ballroom overlooking the city skyline, but I bypassed it. After a quick thank you to my band and crew, I changed out of my stage clothes and slipped out a side door where a car was waiting. An hour later, I was sitting in my grandmother's cozy, fire-lit living room. The whole family was there. Not for a party, but for something quieter, something more real. Naomi and Julian joined us, now honorary members of our strange, patched-together clan. Grandma Evelyn held court from her favorite armchair, a glass of sherry in her hand. My parents were making sandwiches in the kitchen, their movements easy and synchronized in a way that I hadn't seen in years. Celeste and I sat on the floor by the fireplace, sorting through a box of old family photos she had found in the attic. "Look at this one," she said, handing me a faded picture. It was the 2 of us, aged probably 6 and 10, our arms around each other, grinning gap-teeth smiles. "I remember that day," I said, softly. "We spent the whole afternoon building a fort in the backyard." "I was so bossy," Celeste laughed, a real, unburdened sound. "You were," I agreed, smiling, but I didn't mind. We continued to sift through the memories, the good and the bad. We didn't shy away from the difficult ones. We acknowledged the talent show, the years of distance, the painful interview. We talked about them not as accusers and defenders, but as 2 people trying to understand their shared past.
Later, my father came and sat with us. He didn't say much, but he listened, really listened, as Celeste and I talked. "I was so afraid of failing," he said at one point, his voice quiet. "I put all that pressure on you, Celeste, because I was terrified of not being a successful parent. And Lyra, I just assumed you were fine. You were so self-sufficient. It was easier to just let you be. I see now that self-sufficient was just another word for neglected." The admission was stunning in its simple honesty. It was the kind of insight that years of therapy had finally unearthed. We didn't solve everything that night. The scars were still there, but for the first time, we were looking at them together, not pretending they didn't exist. We were a family in recovery, learning a new language of honesty and accountability. As the night wound down, I found myself alone on the porch with my mother. The air was crisp and cold, the sky full of stars. You know, for years, I measured my success as a mother by Celeste's awards and accolades. She said, her voice barely a whisper. I see now that my greatest success was the daughter I barely paid attention to, the one who learned to be strong, not because of us, but in spite of us. You saved us from ourselves, Lyra. We're saving each other, I replied, and for the first time I reached out and took her hand. It felt strange and right. My life now is a beautiful, improbable blend of my 2 worlds. I still have my quiet mountain house where I go to write and be still, but I also have a small apartment in the city, just a few blocks from my grandmother. My relationship with my family continues to be a work in progress. Some days are easier than others. Old habits sometimes die hard. But we are committed to the work. We show up for each other, not just for the big moments, but for the small ones too. Celeste and I have become collaborators in more than just music. We work together on the Echo Foundation, her new skills in music therapy bringing a depth and expertise to our programs that I could never have provided alone. We are, finally, a team. My father retired from his law firm and now does pro bono work for the foundation, handling our legal affairs. My mother, with her impeccable taste, volunteers to help design the music rooms we build in underserved schools. They have found a new purpose, one that is not about reflected glory, but about genuine contribution.
The greatest gift to come from this journey was not the fame or the success, but the freedom to use my own voice, to tell my own story, and to define my own worth. I learned that the people who try to silence you are often the ones who are most afraid of their own inadequacy. And I learned that a family is not something you are born into, but something you build. You build it with honesty, with forgiveness, and with the courage to tear down the old structures that are no longer working, to make room for something new to grow. Have you ever felt silenced by someone you love? What did it take for you to find your voice again? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your power. Remember that your story is worth telling and your voice is worth hearing. Thank you for listening.